Okay, now let me carry you through the stuff in Chapter 10. I will, Aaron, want to put some figures on camera, but I'll cue you when we get there. I have two film scenes I want to share with you. One comes from the film Hoosiers, the basketball film done about Indiana and Indiana high school basketball team. And the second one, if we get to it, is from the classic film, The Dirty Dozen, which is something you may not have remembered or even heard of, but it's a classic piece of American cinema that shows some of these concepts. All right, so I'm going to carry you through the chapter with the concepts, and then we're going to apply the concepts to the film scenes and also to yourselves by way of the E exercise. And I have copies of that here. Starts out on page 228 with a definition of a group. It's an interdependent set of people doing a task or trying to reach a common goal. Interdependence used to mean only face-to-face, where the interdependence was the people are physically together and must interact with each other to carry out the tasks of the group. We now add, and I have to revise this section in the future, that interdependence can have an electronic element. And with all of the modern technology that we have, that stuff comes together to shape the interdependence among people. We then distinguish between formal and informal groups, and I already did that with you. This is a formal group. All your other classes in which you are enrolled this semester are other formal groups. Every department within the Anderson School is a formal group. And then there are informal groups that form across those lines and within the formal groups. Those are the ones that are among the most interesting to try to discover as a manager because of the powerful forces they can have on people's behavior. We need some concepts, and there's a stack of them starting on page 229. We have to define the word role, a set of activities, responsibilities, and required behaviors. All of us have a role that we play in each of the formal and informal groups in which we reside. You can think for yourselves about how many formal groups you're associated with, and then also how many informal groups you're likewise a member of. Group norms are rules of behavior. Every group has a set of norms. In a formal group, those norms are what are typically prescribed by a manager for the group, saying that every Friday is dress down day, we work from 9 to 5. Any mixture of these things constitute the rules, the norms for a formal group. It's the informal group norms that often have a strong control on people's behavior. And you can think of the informal groups to which you belong and whether they each have a set of norms, and are those norms different? And the answer usually is yes, they are. Cohesive group is one in which members identify with each other, the task of the group, and the norms of the group. And there is conformity to those norms, and the conformity comes in two types. Compliance means the person goes along with the group's norms and just sort of coasts. It doesn't have any deep emotional attachment to them. But personal acceptance means that the person has internalized the norms, and it becomes part of who they are and what they do. Then we distinguish, and by the way, these are the bolded terms, and they're essential in trying to do any kind of an analysis of a group. And that's what I've tried to do in designing the chapter, and the way we'll use the film scenes, of using the concepts to analyze what's going on around us. We distinguish between required and emergent behavior. required behaviors, easy to understand, that's what you have to do. Emergent behavior sort of grows. Like Topsy, it just sort of happens as a result of the interaction of people in the group. Now, let me give you an example of emergent behavior. This used to be in the chapter, but we took it out to reduce the length. What I'm going to describe to you is a true story, donated to me 25 or more years ago by a student in this class. I have to admit I was a bit incredulous when she described it to us, but here's what she said. She worked as a secretary while going to school for a law firm, an extremely well-known law firm in downtown Albuquerque. She described the floor in which they had their offices as an upper level, doesn't matter what level, of a long rectangular building, so that the offices of the attorneys were on the perimeter of the floor, and the clerks and secretaries all had desks down through the center of the perimeter. Is this clear? I don't want to bother trying to draw it on the board. So you'd have a series of desks in the center, each one inhabited by a person who carried out some activities and interacted with among themselves as well as with the attorneys. One of these people had developed a pattern of behavior that was certainly not prescribed by the law firm, in which she would take out of her desk at 3 p.m. each afternoon a large brandy snifter of M&Ms. And she would place it on the edge of her desk on the corner, and when it's landed on the surface, it would make a sound of the glass snifter hitting the desk and the M&Ms rattling together inside the snifter. Now, so far, is this a believable story? We okay, you think? All right, good. I couldn't make up this story if I wanted to. And I have it recorded in an earlier edition. I've never thrown it away, and I have it memorized. Once that happened, the brandy snifter arrived. Attorneys who were not meeting with clients would come out of their offices and go to the brandy snifter and take a handful of M&Ms. And they would chat among themselves while eating the M&Ms. Some would toss them in the air and catch them in their mouth. Others would toss them and kick them with the heel of their shoe so it went up in the air and catch it and so on. And there would be banter and all kinds of conversation about the clients they had, the cases they were working on, perhaps an experience in court the day before. All sorts of interaction was happening. Now, of the behavior described here, that is, behavior in groups falls into two major classes, required and emergent. Which type of behavior am I describing? Required or emergent? Why do you say emergent?
Because it's developed behavior, it's not required for...
Can you imagine having in the policies of the law firm that at 3 p.m. each day you are required to go to Cindy's desk and take part in M&M time? I'm saying it that way deliberately because of course not. But this behavior was not, it was during break time, it was not interfering with the work activities that they were engaged in. It was amusing, lightweight, and it probably helped keep people together because this is a large floor, as I tried to describe to you. And with a large dispersion or wide dispersion of people, getting them together to interact is difficult. And so it served a function. Well, somewhat later, as this unfolded, the person providing the M&Ms at her own expense decided to buy the generic candy-coated chocolate bits that you can buy at Costco. Now look at those carefully. M&Ms, every single one of them has what on it? The letter M, right? Every one of them. You can imagine the millions, if not billions, of these things they produce in a year, but every one is stamped with an M. And the ones from Costco, and I'll verify this afternoon because I have to stop for some stuff there on the way home, are blank. Do you think that blank ones, compared to the true M&Ms, have a distinctly different taste? I should have thought of buying a set of each and do a taste test. You know, hand you, each of you, one of each, and maybe even disguise them somehow, like rubbing off the M, if you can do that without damaging the coating. Well, she decided to do this because it was costing her money, and so the next week, on Monday at 3 p.m., she puts the brandy snifter of candy-coated chocolate pieces that were the generics on the table. Out come the attorneys and clerks. Everybody gets involved in this. And one fellow, he was always apparently at the start of the line if he didn't have a client. He just loved M&M time, and he loved the M&Ms. So he dips his hand in and takes a bunch of these, tosses them in his mouth, and immediately paused with a grimaced look and said, "These are not true M&Ms." And he said to the person, "How could you do this to us, of infecting us with non-real M&Ms?" Do you believe this part of the story? You look a little incredulous, but you okay? You think it could happen? I mean, these are grown boys and girls. They're not young people. Well, he was emphatic. And what they ended up doing, he began to contribute, whatever that was flying through the air. He and others began to contribute to the M&M fund so they could restart buying true M&Ms. Now, once again, would you say this behavior is required or emergent? It's clearly emergent behavior. By no means were they required to provide M&Ms. And that's the distinction that I want you to take with you as we go forward. Now the section, I'm not going to get into it deeply, but it says functions of groups and organizations. Groups serve specific functions and can have functional and dysfunctional effects. But more importantly is to get to the model of cohesive group formation, because this is what I want us to use when we take a look at the film scene from Hoosiers. It's divided into this section that says model of cohesive group formation on page 230, and is divided into subsections. The figure, and Aaron, the monitors are not on in here. Okay, I can't tell. If you can get a shot, we can see it on some screen. Figure 10-1.
It does see it.
Their connection's kicked on.
All right. I turn the monitors on.
Is it coming? Okay, good.
Yeah, just get tight on the figure, as tight as you can. It's on page 230, but I want to carry you through it. Now, this is going to come to life in the film Hoosiers. It also comes to life in a slightly different way in Dirty Dozen, but in Hoosiers, you're going to see every element here, I believe. And it starts with activities, and our activities are the things that a person has to do in the organization as part of their job duties. They, for example, at the Anderson School, I'm required to engage in certain activities with the faculty and the administrators